They say sometimes it's not how you finish, but it's more important to understand how you start. Does that mean the same if it is that we're looking at why some organizations don't always have the best finishes because they were hiring the wrong way? Let's talk about it in today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of What's the Deal? And today we are going to be talking about recruitment best practices as it relates to filling the gaps the right way, filling that talent pool the right way to be able towards achieving your goal. If you're seeing this for the first time, my name is Lyndon Braffett. I am a lead consultant and sales practitioner right here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I support countries in the English-speaking Caribbean and from time to time externally as it relates to the US. And my main focus with this series is to bring a lot of education and insight into the sales community, because sometimes it's not just about the sales. It's not just about the sales reps can't sell. It's more than that. Sometimes I focus on three main areas, which represents people, which represents process, which also represents technology. But a large percentage of fixing certain problems is a saying that I like that says 50% of the solution is identifying the problem or recognizing and owning the problem. And what we're trying to do today, this one might be a little bit more of a macro size approach, because we want to talk about a very fundamental area of sales, and that has to do with the filling up of your sales team, the recruitment process, the hiring process. Far too often I've heard sales leaders talk about we don't have the right talent, they don't have good salespeople out there. But I'm a person. I've learned how to work things backwards, coming out of a sports background. After something happens, we've learned to analyze. You go look at film, and what you tend to find happening is that maybe we started wrong in the first place. If you're running a race and you don't have a good start, yes, you could make up a good finish somewhere in the 50 meters, 60 meters, especially if you close extremely well. But sometimes if you have a really bad start, it's really hard to finish. And sometimes that start is in the hiring process. Now, organizations are not the only area of focus as it relates to this. So what is it that we did is I was able to scrub the internet, pull some information from some recruitment agencies. I'll share that in a little bit. But I want to just lay this here as a little bit of a foundation. This is not in any way to highlight any deficiencies in individuals or organizations. It's not to lay blame, but it's to highlight where we need issues. As a consultant, what I get often, I normally have people talking about how do we get the staff to be better. And a lot of the times, from a leadership perspective especially, we have to talk a little bit about do we as organizations and as leaders hiring other people, especially if you're hiring other leaders to lead a team, have we done the best in terms of giving these people what's required to sell, to do the job properly? And another part of that is we want to also make sure, are we also having the right best practices in terms of nurturing? Have we properly laid out or set the expectation as to what this job is all about? And that's why I'm starting with job descriptions. Now, this isn't new to me. And when I say this, I mean, this is something that I've been talking about for a little while, right? Now, I haven't been talking about it a lot, but I've said it in 2020. And so what you're seeing here is where I would have started the conversation along the lines of the job title doesn't match the job description. It's a YouTube video that's on our YouTube channel. And it basically speaks. The title in itself says exactly what my observations have been. And the other one on the left, this is 5 years old, as a LinkedIn post. It's having a conversation with a top sales practitioner coming out of Jamaica. Her name is Beverly Thompson. And we were talking about a few things that's also in this conversation. So we'll bring it up, but we were talking specifically about base salaries, commission-based, going after particular objectives, where companies sometimes find misalignment. Sometimes the blame game internally is, hey, you didn't do a good job, but there's so many variables, so many different factors that it's not always the fault of the sales rep. Sometimes it could be the fault of the organization, because what you would have asked for or how you would have set the stage for this person to do their job, they may be checking some boxes, but we haven't properly outlined what's required for them to sell. Now, a little bit of a transparency statement. I will not be sharing any job descriptions, and there's a reason for that. I'm not sharing any job descriptions because I want to give the entities that I was able to scrape that data from, because I will be sharing some of that with them. I want to give them the opportunity to actually come to to an episode, and I want us to talk about it, and I want to bring some other people, but I don't want people to feel as though they're caught off guard because they're seeing some of their stuff on the internet and we kind of critiquing it or analyzing it. But I really want to give them the opportunity to maybe pay attention to this episode first, come on to the episode after, to another episode after, and then we could bring other people who are supporting other areas, other roles, etc. And we properly analyze, because based upon how some recruitment agencies are set up, they necessarily don't write the job descriptions, which could be a shortcoming in itself, right? Mm-hmm. Because some job descriptions are not written properly at all. So would organizations need help in doing that? I'm pretty sure that they do. So who's now going to be responsible in terms of helping them do just that? All right. So what are we talking about today? Well, as I gave the preamble, I want to talk about the hiring problem, right? And as we're talking about the hiring problem, I want to give you an idea that one of the things that I was able to do, I was able to scrub through the internet, right? And ever so often I would get feedback or updates on specific vacancies. And I was able to pull just approximately 87 job descriptions as it relates to sales. And they ranged from different areas as it relates to FMCG, real estate, B2B sales, medical, automotive, tech, industrial sales, and different countries as well, right? So we're looking at Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and the sources were Jobs TT. There was some other recruitment agencies inside there as well. I think there was Regency that was in there as well. There was some direct postings. I saw one or two from LinkedIn. And then, of course, there was Caribbean Jobs, which everyone is familiar with, right? And again, as I say, this isn't to highlight any organization as them doing something bad, because it's really the employers who are the ones that's doing it. The recruitment agencies are just hosting the job descriptions. So the main focus here is on the organization as it relates to what are they asking for. And then, of course, the recruitment agency is just the host for the information that goes out in this mass particular way, all right? So here's what we were able to look at. Now, this might look a little junky, There is a resource, there is a blog that we have this information here. But a couple of the things that I was able to look at was, especially as it relates to these job descriptions for the sales roles, I broke it down as it relates to what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, and what particular recommendations I was able to make. And if I were to pay attention to a couple areas here, so what are the things that I like? So from the sales rep, what we will call the SDR post, which is up to the top, I do like the fact that there are most job descriptions that clearly focused on prospecting and lead generation. That was good, right? Other areas were most roles, defined the customer engagement and quota expectations. Now it says most, and I will say that I'll maybe just give a early spoiler here. One of the companies, or not companies, one of the industries that really has most of the postings is insurance. And insurances sometimes tend to be a high turnover. So that type of job description comes up a lot. And then, of course, we saw things like the key account manager, which meant that with the key account manager side of things, that there was a good focus on customer retention and long-term revenue. However, on the bad side, and again, all of this information is going to be made available, right? On the bad side, there were some positions, especially when we look at the sales rep positions, where they're being asked to sell, but there's a high dependency on administration. So let me just kind of come in here a little bit. The reason why that's important is because there's a standard metric. I think this metric has been running. I have not looked at this particular metric over maybe about a year or so, but the same thing applies based upon conversations that I've had in different organizations in different industries, where you would hear sales rep talk about the amount of paperwork that they have to submit as part of their process for the sale. So when I see that, when we do the analysis and it is saying that heavy emphasis on administrative tasks, which does not fully support a true sales role, then that is one particular area sometimes where you are adding more friction to the role of the sales rep, to the functions of the sales rep, because the structure, listen to me what I'm saying properly, the structure of the sales team isn't one where there is someone that the sales rep could rely on to manage that, but some of those duties, right? And that is extremely important. So when someone, yes, a sales rep more than likely will have to do some data entry, some writing up of some paperwork, but it's 2025. Now we'll talk about this further down, but there are certain things that could be done now where they don't have to do a lot of that writing up. But we'll get into that later on, right? So when we talk about those bad areas, we could also look at, particular areas where, if we look at the second one where it says business development rep, which is right around here, right? Confusing overlap with account management roles. Many are expected to handle renewals. Now, in some instances, account managers, the renewals sometimes come from a customer success team. So maybe a clear differentiation as to what, like when it comes to renewals, is not so much so a matter of renewing the business, but growing the business. Renewals could be managed by customer success, but growing the business, maybe getting customers to take, let me come back into view here, maybe getting customers to take additional product lines or SKUs, growing the business, not renewing the account. Because renewing the account sometimes is a very small portion. And if based upon how your team is built out, the renewals could be done by customer success, providing that you have a team like that. But if not, and it's one of their checkboxes, sometimes all that they are going to be focused on is renewals, not growing the business. And to grow the business as a key account manager or as an account manager, that requires a different approach altogether, because they now have to be very, very cognizant of what's happening in that organization. The sales approach for that individual has to be very different, as opposed to if it is that they were just nurturing for renewals. And the same thing applies as it relates to the role between somebody who's a new business, All right. So if it is that we are going back to the information, if we're looking at the graphic here, let's look at what are the indifferent, right? This is where when I say indifferent, it means that some of what we saw here was it was neither good nor bad, but it was still important for us to mention, right? So there was I want to go down to the bottom here where it says little mention of digital sales. Now, when I say that, I mean this. Little mention of digital sales means that they are not using any digital related sales strategies. So whether it's growing the business or whether it's acquiring new business, most of what we saw in the job description was some very generic approaches. Again, we have those things listed out further on in terms of key observations or key takeaways. But some of the approaches as it relates to sales, especially on the insurance sales side, was very generic. Like the way that insurance sales reps, the way that those job descriptions are written, you could tell that the approach that is going to be taught is very standard, is very generic, it's not very modern. So, and I'll be very, very honest with you all. In 2025, there are certain sales roles that can become very labor intensive, especially if we're not using modern 2025 digital strategies. Yeah. So yes, we know that we have to see a lot of people or pound the pavement, quote unquote, as an old terminology, which I hate, but most older sales leaders in that industry might understand, but would understand it. But there are ways that you could now have a broader reach if you're adopting digital sales strategies. So, as it relates to the graphic in itself, it is speaking to different areas in terms of what's good, what's bad, and what's indifferent. And if I had to point out anything, so some of the things that I like as it relates to with medical sales, I felt that medical sales was very, very clear in terms of its focus. I've always seen that as a matter of fact, right? That medical sales is medical sales. The structure for that has a particular flow, but some roles expect medical sales experience or medical experience without the sales experience. So in some instances, you would see the job description written in such a way where you must have, which is understandable because it's medicine, right? So you must have some expertise in, let's say, some particular area of medicine. However, the person, like the requirements for being included into sales or having some sales experience might be pretty low sometimes, right? So which means in the long term, if that person is now beginning to learn sales, then you tend to find that it may take them a little while to really gear up in terms of, especially if they're not being taught modern sales strategies. All right. So key takeaways as it relates to the sales role, we have what's good, strong focus on revenue generation in most job descriptions. Positive. Round of applause for you all on that. The other instance here was clearly defined expectations on insurance and medical sales. Remember, I was just saying that, right? The bad, however, is that many sales roles included administrative and customer service duties. And as I was saying from before, if you want your sales folks, based upon what those roles and objectives are, if you want your salespeople to be able to sell and dedicate that time on their sales, then you have to find out where do we remove the friction. Because if you speak to the reps, what percentage of their time is really spent selling and out in fires and doing customer service? In the automotive space, you might hear some sales reps say, well, they had to go and pick up a vehicle. A rep should not be going to be picking up any vehicle. That there should be a way for the organization to deliver the vehicle to the sales rep so that they can do their job. So those things should not be happening at all. But I understand because I've been in automotive sales, and yes, we had to go and pick up vehicles and do this and that and the third. But it's not because it was a sales role. It was just because there was a handicap in the organization. And then we were short on manpower to move the vehicles from one location to the next, because my role should always be selling. And in there's certain industries in certain countries, you're not going to find that happening at all. Somebody's going to get in trouble for that. And the indifferent, we did see instances of requests for CRM, no specific CRM in this particular instance. Even though it didn't indicate that training is going to be provided on this as it relates to the CRM, I took it as that it will be expected. And of course, in terms of the hunters and farmers, which I'm going to go into just now, the differentiation as it relates to what are you hiring for is extremely important, right? Sales leaders now. We're going to give you all the ability to kind of see this a little bit more with the sales leadership side of things, right? What was very good is that I saw that there were instances where the role of a sales leader was positioned to be that bridge between the organization and the sales rep. That is perfect, right? I also like the fact that, excuse me, if we're looking at the second one here, right, there was an emphasis on pipeline management and sales strategies. If I come down to the lower end here, where I have the star down to the bottom, I was pleasantly surprised that there was an emergence of some rules as it relates to chief revenue officer. Now, let me come back to you all with this. If you remember the episode that I did last week, where we went beyond the rules, the new sales rules that's coming up in 2025, that's in the Caribbean. So if you've been in sales for a particular period of time and you feel as though you've been stuck and you want to know as to what's there for you, one of the rules that I spoke about that someone with the experience can get involved in is a chief revenue officer. And I was indicating a chief revenue officer's roles and responsibility is to kind of oversee marketing, sales, and service, because revenue is his or her portfolio. And I was happy to see that came up here once, right? Within it, because it's an emerging role. Now, it's not an emerging role in other parts of the world, but it's an emerging role in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, what you would also find, you might say, but how is a vice president of sales? That is not the same thing, because this person is in charge of all revenue. So his or her role and responsibility of what they look for, where are we getting churn, where could we add more revenue, what is our strategies, it's kind of all encompassing, because even things down to sales operations, that person is going to be looking for. So what was only good is that those particular areas that's in green really, really stood out to me. Yeah. And apart from that, there were some things on the side that was bad, which was some of the sales roles were heavy on reporting and light on coaching. Again, heavy on reporting and light on coaching. Now, I don't know how they're going to be using the reports, because if you notice, we did mention things like use of a CRM from before. So if you are using a CRM, fingers crossed that you are, then it makes the role of reporting easier, because the CRM would automatically be picking up that. Or if you're using Microsoft BI or whatever other Microsoft tool or whatever sales tool that you might be using, CRM tool that you might be using. But if not, then we all know that reporting takes up time. And that could be also very labor intensive. And then you tend to find you get sales managers who are number crunchers. So like all they spend their time doing is managing the desk and not coaching the people. And that's why that differentiation was made there. All right. Also, if we look at the sales director's role, there was no clear mention of sales enablement, ownership, and a tech stack. I'm going to come back to you on here again. The reason why that is important is because in 2025, there are new sales strategies that you should be using, especially when the world is so digital. And sales enablement is an all-encompassing strategy that enables sales and marketing, and even if we want to push the envelope, even service, to be able to work together towards achieving that. So when we have organizations, when I look at this, it kind of tells me where organizations are not going, because a lot of the things are still traditional. It's still the same. There hasn't been much evolution in terms of, okay, so our sales department, we want our sales department to look and run like this. And that sometimes is where the challenge is, even in my role as a consultant, because it's sometimes difficult. It's good to be able to sell the vision or share the vision, but someone has to own the vision, and it can't be me. So if an organization isn't owning the vision, and if we pay attention to what the job descriptions tell us, it says a lot. It tells us that a lot of organizations are kind of stuck in the same place. That's not always a good thing, because what we are looking for is growth. That's why I said last week that when I see certain roles and job descriptions, it tells me if the industry is growing. And in many instances, the industry isn't growing because we have the same job descriptions coming up over and over. As a matter of fact, if you look at the job descriptions itself, you get to see the same job descriptions by the same companies coming up over and over and over. So it's either no one is applying or people are not staying long enough in those roles. It could be a bad role altogether, or the benchmarks or the tasks at hand are not very clear, so it makes it difficult for the person to achieve what they're supposed to achieve, or a myriad of different things. That's what I'm saying. This is really a macro issue here when it comes to things like organizational behavior and all the other things that people go to school to study. It's really now a matter of bringing that information now to the forefront. What's the indifferent? Some postings mix the key account manager with sales manager roles and responsibilities. Again, I can give a customer, I can give that a little bit of a blight, because you could say, well, we want our key account manager to start understanding those roles because we want to start training him or her. But I don't think that should be in all requirements, because at the end of the day, your key accounts manager's role is to focus on sales. All right. And as I said, if you're looking at account management, then giving them certain sales management roles, it doesn't matter. The unfortunate thing is, if that is in your job description, then it means that that's going to be in their KPIs. And I don't know how well that KPI is going to measure to anything else. So again, I'm going back to the beginning. If you ask for the wrong thing, then you're going to get the wrong thing. And sometimes, no disrespect to anybody here, sometimes I was once a sales manager myself. And before I became at this level, I didn't always know what I was asking for. Real talk. So I'm not making it up when I say that some job descriptions are copy and paste. A lot of what it says in there is all good, but sometimes it's not well aligned to what the goals and responsibilities are. All right. So what's good? Well, sales director and sales manager roles focus on pipeline and team performance. That's good. Key account managers position for long-term client growth, not just renewals, client growth, right? That's also good. And well, of course, some of the things I would have said there from before, sales managers are too admin focused and little or no room for strategic coaching and planning with your teams. It's actually an exercise. It's actually a session that I've been doing with one of my larger clients now since maybe around September. Strategic planning and management and coaching has been one of the modules that keeps coming up. All right. It was 8 modules that we did. And that module, we're seeing that module comes up over and over and over because it's an ongoing thing as it relates to leadership. Here's going to be an interesting one, because this one focuses on traditional versus modern sales approaches. So again, just by looking at the job descriptions, it says a lot. So it tells me where organizations are. So when we look at the traditional side, give you all the opportunity to kind of see this up close. When we look at the traditional side, cold calling, referrals, all those normal traditional things are still there. CRM usage, basic pipeline tracking. As a matter of fact, I will even tell you that there are some instances where CRM usage is just to input data. It's nothing to be used strategically at all. Anyway, sales strategies, transactional versus product-based. Again, I will definitely say that is a reality, because again, most organizations have this very transactional way of doing their stuff. And you could tell that while organizations talk about customer centricity, there isn't a customer centric side of things that's happening in there, because you could tell. So when we analyze this, it says to us, okay, so the sales strategy is more transactional or product based as opposed to it being more consultative based. And as a matter of fact, consultative selling is maybe one of the key things that's across almost all industries, even in retail. If there are ways that you could operate as a consultant in the retail space based upon what is it that you're selling. But that's another conversation for another time. All right. And well, of course, sales enablement is very, very minimal in this particular space, right? And well, look on the flip side of that, right? So I have 2024 because all of the job descriptions were matched up until December 31st, 2024. So the modern ways of going about those things would be social selling, video prospecting, or I have social selling there twice, inbound sales, and using AI, right? On the CRM side, and this is where the beauty of it comes in, the automation, right? So if your sales team is using a CRM that helps them do certain things, even for the sales manager, how can we now automate certain things, do workflows, and predictive sales analytics? So even when it comes to your forecast, using the tools to give the sales rep more time, sales rep and sales managers more time back to themselves, so that they can now use that data to be better at coaching their people, right? The sales strategy is consultative based, and well, of course, that goes into things like social selling, whichever methodology you decide to use. In our blog, I spoke specifically that companies can develop their own methodologies. You don't have to take a methodology from somebody. Develop your own sales methodology. This is how we go about selling. And then you train to suit that. Basically, what you're going to be doing, you're going to be taking bits and pieces from different methodologies to make it your own. And that is cool. But have your own cadence and style of how you want to go about selling. Because sometimes, if you talk to 10 different reps in one organization, all of them using different sales strategies, because there isn't a standard way that's taught as to how to sell. So like if you walk into an organization today, sales rep A and sales rep B might sell two totally different ways. Anyway, right? And when it comes to things like sales enablement, again, using the technology, how do we use now coaching and playbooks and video-based stuff to help with that? All right. So again, there's so much that can be happening as it relates. So when we look at the job description, it tells us a lot of what's happening, of what's not happening as it relates to the industry. All right. So again, challenges, but let's talk specifically on the opportunity, right? There's an opportunity for companies to modernize their teams with digital sales tools. And I don't want organizations to miss out on that because it's an extremely important opportunity at this time. All right. So coming back to something here. Now, you would have seen the slide that came up with that. And it spoke about one department's important role. Now, there's a very, very important department. There's a department as they play a pivotal role in the success of all of this. And that department is HR. Now, again, how you start is how you finish. And I would always like to say that HR has such an amazing role because guidance towards how would a sales manager, where two people can help each other. HR can help the sales manager, sales leadership, work towards finding the right people, putting together the right type of profile. And of course, the sales manager can help HR by letting them know, okay, based upon our goals and objectives, these are the things that we want. But it also means too that, does it also mean that your approach in terms of how you build that character, it's like if you're playing a video game and you are building a character for 2K 2025, you go through a process of building that person, or whatever you want to call it, your avatar, to be that number one. And far too often I hear organizations talk about how difficult it is to find good people. But a large percentage of the organization's role is developing the people. And what I see sometimes in some job descriptions isn't so much so developmental based. Yes, I know that these people you want them to come in and do a job, but getting them from point A to point B in terms of doing that job for you is extremely important. And that is where the role of HR in terms of redefining its approach to talent development Now, some organizations have a learning and development or training and development team inside. Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's a team. But at the end of the day, it means that there's a dedicated focus on getting someone trained up based upon what the goals and objectives are of the organization. So, what will be that rule if we had to take a look at that? And that's where I really like to kind of spin things back into the space of HR, because HR does have a role to play, right? As it relates to things like the job descriptions, as it relates to things like HR relies solely on the sales manager's input, but sales leaders may not always articulate hiring needs properly. So HR being a support to the organization, because that's what their role is, right? Can also be a little bit of a consultant. Tell us what it is that you need. You know, how aggressive does this person need to be? And that even goes back to the hunter farmer thing here, right? Because I think I have that somewhere further up where we spoke about, hunters versus farmers. So based upon what you are looking for, based upon what your goals and objectives are, then who are you looking for? And that's where now HR kind of steps in there and helps you, especially if it's a young manager, craft the right job description to at least try to begin in terms of hiring the right people, the hiring process. So HR has a very important role as it relates to that, right? So when I look at key responsibilities and as it relates to hiring, right? Consulting sales leaders on role structure. See, point I was just making, right? Ensuring hiring profiles. If you go back to something that I wrote that speaks to 4 ways HR could support sales development, one of those ways is creating a profile. What do we want that sales rep to look like? If we already have a successful sales rep inside the organization, how can we replicate that? It may not be 100%, but how can we replicate that to now say, okay, this is the type of individual that we want to develop for our organization. This is what we see as our organization's culture. And at the same time, this is what we want for our customers too. Right? So you're trying to look at it from on two sides of the spectrum. Right? Performance management and sales enablement approach. The performance management is extremely important. Like, what will success be and how are you going to measure that? These are the types of conversations that will come up, because if you don't have it, you're basically, again, just allowing people to just do what they want inside organizations. And I've seen that happen too many times. Sometimes there's no sales there's no performance management structure in an organization. And because there's no performance management structure, people are not hitting targets, and there's no recourse in terms of putting people back on a performance improvement plan, or even putting them on an exit strategy. At the end of the day, it's business. If we can't repurpose the individual, if we can't work towards getting the individual back to where they need to be, remember, a contract was signed to say, this is what's required of you. If that person is not hitting those numbers for whatever reason, then you have a number of different options, because one of the roles and responsibilities of the organization, that person, is to work towards achieving the goals for the organization. All right. So, but far too often, I think that there's a knee-jerk thing that's happening there, because there's a cost of hiring the wrong way. And this is the HR's business model. So HR has a role to play. And if that isn't really, it's going to become a cost to the organization, from not meeting targets, like I have highlighted in yellow here. Bad job descriptions equal bad hires, equal underperformance, equals expensive exits. And expensive exits in Trinidad and Tobago could be anything from industrial relation actions, or it's taking too long to get the person out or move to a different location. And what is happening there is costing your sales. Sometimes organizations or departments have a salary cap. So they can't go beyond a particular strategy, but by removing this one person, it creates the opportunity to bring that someone else who could fill that gap. But because we're not doing the right hiring practices or the right performance management practices, we're a little bit handicapped as it relates to being salary capped. towards achieving your goals and objectives. All right. So if we're going back in, right. So again, where HR can improve in terms of sales hiring, again, just work with sales enablement and sales operations personnel, basically a sales manager, to create onboarding and training roadmaps. That's very, very important. And I think somebody who's doing that really has to be passionate, like going around to each department and really finding out what does a 2025 or 2026 customer look like based upon what's changing in your industry. Does the sales rep of last year, 2024, would that sales rep look the same? Because it also means even if I don't need to make personnel changes, what training changes do I need to make? There's a lot to go into this particular conversation. What training decisions do I need to make towards getting your people? So this is HR talk saying, now, what do we need to do to help your people get to where they need to be in the future? Because we don't want to wait until 2025 to develop. We want to start developing in 2024 for 2025 goals and objectives, in 2025 and for 2026 goals and objectives. And again, that is where understanding all of these different aspects. So when I say sometimes that the job descriptions are not evolving, because job descriptions from back then are written the same way now. Yeah. So what are sales hiring needs in 2025 and beyond? So just let me share this with you, all right? So I highlighted here as it relates to things like skills, and I didn't go very, very deep. And I want to indicate when I share this particular blog, in the blog is going to be consistently updated over time. So at least once a quarter, I'll be putting some updates to the blog as apart from creating a whole new blog. And so what we start off doing here is what I felt was the core things. So when we look at the skills, what's currently in demand, so CRM and sales tech, that's current, but it's a low burn. But future demand, you're going to recognize here that it's essential. So let me just kind of bring this forward, just bring this up a little bit more, right? AI and automation, it's low right now, cold, ice, but it's going to be very critical as it relates to what is required in the future from 2025 right now and the future. Social selling, you hear my boy JB, he speaks about this a lot. It's cold right now. He's been doing a good job in terms of trying to add some warmth to it, but it is extreme. It's definitely a must-have because social media is a big part of sales right now. And that goes back to the conversation I would have had before, where I spoke about digital strategies, sales coaching and enablement. The approach to developing your team is critical in 2025. And virtual prospecting, video selling. And I just put that there as a placeholder. But that's definitely a must-have, especially if you are in B2B sales. Especially if you are in marketing in 2025 and you want to be using certain things and you have a CRM and you want to be pushing products or you want to be pushing promotions or campaigns to customers, then the use of all the respective customer touch points, WhatsApp and all the respective social channels. Guess what? There are CRM platforms that helps marketers push campaigns there on behalf of the salesperson. Look at what I just said there. Campaigns that helps marketers push to the customers to support the sales team. That's what's happening in 2025. And that's where you should be, and that's how your job description should be written. Even if we're even talking about marketing supporting sales as yet. We're just talking about what we have as it relates to sales. Yeah. So my recommendations here, especially when it comes to new things. Now, this was something that was really, really important because when it came down to requirements, and again, when you look at the report, it's going to say that the requirements for sales, I'm seeing things like degrees. Not necessary. Unless it's a very specific thing or unless that organization just has a standard. But for sales, I don't know. Because there's really no place to get a proper degree. However, there are places that you can go to be trained or to get certifications. So you have LinkedIn Learning, so frictionless selling. That's something that sales managers should be doing, and that comes out of HubSpot's Academy. There's a course for sales managers as well that sales managers can do from HubSpot Academy. Yeah, and look at understand where the focus is. It focuses on consultative selling and reducing friction in the sales process. What does that mean? It means that the sales manager or the sales rep understand different ways to be more efficient in terms of how they sell. Maybe even turning sales around in a much faster way. Those things are things that you're paying attention to right now. Sales leadership, there's LinkedIn learning courses for that. And on the HubSpot Academy, it teaches coaching, sales strategy, and leadership skills. Account-based management, very important, especially for people who carry these roles of sales and marketing managers. You all need to be doing some account-based sales and marketing, because that teaches you key account sales, which is what we also saw coming up. So you want you want to have account managers or sales account managers or key account managers. Then they need to also understand how to do account-based sales and marketing in 2025. And that covers personalized B2B selling and relationship management. Look at right here. It's all laid out. All right. And then from an inbound sales side, this was really low on the spectrum too, right? But because so many organizations or sales reps are using social media, and they're just using it, they're not using it with any science or strategy involved. They're just using the damn thing, which is good. At least they're using it. But if they really understand what an inbound sales methodology is, then they will now be able to now support themselves with social selling, and well, of course, LinkedIn prospecting, or even how they want to engage on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, based upon, because right now, again, it's just generic. It's just post, boost, respond to a couple of things. Hopefully the person is interested. It's not a sales strategy. And a lot of those leads are now coming from online sources. Yeah. So my final thoughts as it relates to this is sales hiring should be skills-based, not degree-based. And I mean that. All right. Sales roles should be clearly defined, hunters versus farmers. All right. HR must collaborate closely with sales to ensure the right alignment, building out the right profile, having the right people. And companies must invest in training for modern sales techniques, AI, social selling, all the whole 9 yards, everything I would have mentioned from before, right? Because it's really, really critical. There are some action plans here for both employers, but I want to put this here for the person seeking these jobs. You have to make it your priority. Let me say this again. You have to make it your priority to get your skills in order, right? You need to get to a stage where you are skilled. You're not waiting for the organization to do something for you. You are taking care of what you need to take care of. So no one is doing your work for you at all. You are doing what's necessary for you. It's the main area and focus towards getting yourself ready in terms of how best you want to sell in 2025, right? And again, it's important that we have resources like this to help us achieve the things that we want to achieve, or just to help make sense of what's happening in the industry. This here is my contribution again to the sales community, and I hope folks take the time to go in and check it out, because hiring in 2025, and it's not just 2025, hiring hasn't been easy. All right. And there's a lot of waste in money. There's a lot of waste in time and in effort. You tend to find sometimes organizations put a pause on hiring because they're thinking that there's not enough in the talent pool. But in some instances, they just really haven't been doing the right things. Again, how you finish sometimes depends on how you start. And my objective with sessions like these is to really bring to light, maybe open the conversation within your offices. Are we writing the right job descriptions? Am I asking for the right things? Are my people where they're supposed to be? Because you could spend a lot of time going through that hiring process, going through that probationary process, only to find out that you made mistakes along the way, and it's costing you money, it's costing you time, and it's costing you growth. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been another episode of What's the Deal? And we spoke about sales hiring, what Caribbean companies get wrong. As I said, what we did is that we scrubbed through a number of different, we are over close to 100 job descriptions through different online sources, locally and regionally. And the objective is to really give us and give you an idea as to what is happening. Because I'll say one more thing too, and I'll say from the perspective of a sales trainer. It doesn't matter how much training we do. If you have a bad hire, it's not going to change the result. Yeah. And if you don't have the right performance management metrics in place and the approach to managing your people from a performance standpoint, again, doesn't matter how much training you can bring in the best trainers, you're going to have the same end result. So sometimes when I was in the bank, they had something called get it right the first time. We're not perfect, but we can set ourselves up to do our best to try at least to get it right the first time so that we mitigate our cost and time in the future. I hope this was valuable to you all. I want to say thank you all for taking the time to look at this at your convenience. All right. Take care, guys. Peace.